There is an event coming up on Thursday night I want to tell you about. The speaker is dynamic. And as a matter of fact, the speaker, his name is Vish Burra. He is responsible for the Hunter Biden laptop from hell. And I'm not even exactly sure how he is, but he's a very, very interesting guy. And Brett Lindell, the president of 38 GOP, is with me. He's putting on the event. He's going to tell us about the event. And I met him, about 5 years ago, something like that, 6 years ago. And Brett was always a liberty guy. And the first thing I ever heard him say had to do with that book right there that says The Law. That's not a law book. That is my favorite political book probably of all time. If you say, Bernie, what book should I read first to understand government? I would say read The Law by Frederick Bastiat. It was written in 1850 by a French philosopher / economist. And it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. And instead of being called the law, it could have been called the government. And it explores what the proper relationship is in a free society between government and people. And it explores human nature. Why in the hell are bureaucrats and elected officials somehow more noble than the rest of us? History and reality proves that's not the case. It is an incredible book. Bastiat died, I think, the next year after that. But the first thing I ever heard Brett Lindell say, he was quoting Frederick Bastiat. And he didn't know that I felt this way about the book. So I immediately gravitated toward him. And I'm going to bring Brett on the show now. This is Brett Lindell, GOP president. Let's put everything up here. There's the event. Brett, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved. Did you start 38 GOP?
Yeah, so I started it with a group of volunteers, kind of going back. When I first moved here in 2013, I had lived in the west end of Panama City Beach. That's how you and I met. And then in about 2015, I moved over to Walton County, started to get involved in the local politics there. So part of the Republican Executive Committee of Walton County. And then, just in the last year, life is happening, working, kids and stuff. But I felt this privilege of freedom, but also this burden. And we have Governor Ron DeSantis as our governor. He only won by 30,000 votes in the last election. And we have another general election coming up this November. And so I knew a lot of people felt that way. We were a little bit underserved or underrepresented in the kind of east part of South Walton County. And I kept hoping for someone to start a club. It didn't happen. And so found a group of people. We started it up. We had our first meeting back in May, but we have grown absolutely tremendously. If I check the roster right now, we have 83 paid members and about 20 to 30 verbal commits. And to put that in perspective, there's clubs in Walton County and in Bay County that are around 140, and that's considered fantastic. And just in this short amount of time, we've had people join up with us. We've had amazing speakers. One of them specifically was Christina Pashaw. That was a few months ago. And she's the press secretary for Governor DeSantis. We have representatives from the DeSantis campaign and different campaigns who come to our events, because if you want to access Walton County, our club has kind of been the one to go to. So 38 GOP, you don't have to live on 38 to be a part of it. It just kind of encompasses the entire south part of Walton County, which is unique. So started a little bit ago, and we're doing great. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm honored to call you a friend, and now even more honored to be a guest.
Yeah, and I want you to, before we talk about the event, I'd like to explore your background a little bit and your philosophy a little bit, and let everybody know we have a mutual friend that we both adore, Tho Bishop. Absolutely. With the Mises Institute. The guy is brilliant. He understands liberty. He understands politics. He understands economics. And he understands how to pick a great wife. Evidently, I can't believe it. Forrest is amazing. That's a great story. But so I was surprised to hear that you were so plugged into the GOP, because when we met, you were disaffected with parties and
Yeah.
didn't like parties. As a matter of fact, I think you were kind of a what I would consider an anarcho-capitalist, pretty much, and now you're leading the 38 GOP, but
Yeah.
you're really a liberty guy. And before we go look into your background, tell me about this transition, because there is a rift, isn't there, in the GOP? Everybody's fed up with rhinos, with Republicans who aren't willing to stand for anything, and that doesn't describe you and what you want, does it?
No, and to fully understand my background, so when I got, I was in the Marines during Iraq. When I got out, I was an intern for Congressman Ron Paul in his Lake Jackson office. My wife and I, who was just my fiance at the time, we were very involved in his campaign for president. We were both delegates to the Senate and state uh, Republican, party. So we were big in the Republican stuff there. But if you remember, in 2011, they told you all you have to do for liberty is vote for Mitt Romney. He's going to save everything, right? And
Oh
that
my.
would explain, when you and I met in like 2013 or 14, a little bit of the disaffectedness. So I had never gone. A lot of people from that movement, there's a few divisions. Some went to the libertarian side, big L. Some went to the libertarian side, small L. But I was one of those who still remain in the Republican Party, but extremely disenfranchised. I mean, just think of those years from the Tea Party up until 2016 of just the rhinos and neocons. And now looking back, what we were seeing was a little bit of the flushing out and a little bit of the populist movement rising. And I'd have to say that, while I've been a disenfranchised Republican before that, I've got to give Donald Trump a lot of credit. In 2016, I was extremely skeptical of him. And I don't know if I agree with 50% of everything he says, but his ability to raise the populism is something that started to make me change my mind. And then if I go to Walton County, I just care about liberty. And the vehicle to achieve liberty is the GOP, or the Republican Party, where I'm at. And
And he was, by the way, Brett, he was fantastic, I think, on foreign policy,
yeah,
getting us out of wars, bringing peace to the Middle East. That's unreal. Reigning in North Korea. I thought that was never going to happen.
yeah,
And that
it's
to me was phenomenal.
yeah, and it's definitely had me change my mind a little bit. And when you say anarcho-capitalist, that's really like a book of philosophy you read, and I can still kind of hold that philosophical foundation, but that is also in a vacuum, and you also have to deal with reality. And I think that the philosophies are great until it gets time to make some decisions, and what you find is sometimes you are going to have to choose the lesser of two evils. What the right does very poorly, or what the left does way better than the right, is they understand the use of power, and they understand what to do when they hold the House and the Senate and the presidency. And the right has always messed that up.
That's
And
all the left cares about right now. Power.
yeah,
It's just power. And I'm not talking about liberals. I'm talking about the left.
yeah. What I think, kind of jumping forward, DeSantis is actually one of the biggest inspirations for me, because uh, just a short margin win by 30,000 votes. And I
Less than a
asked my,
half a percent.
yeah, if you do the math of the 67 counties in Florida and as many neighborhoods in there, that's about one or two people more per neighborhood voting for Governor DeSantis than Andrew Gillum. And as I say in my meetings, if you want to know what Andrew Gillum's doing right now, go Google it. Just make sure you're not in front of a polite society or children or anything like that.
Time. That's what he's going to be doing, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And so, DeSantis is someone who inspired me on the populism side, but also showed like what a strong executive can and should do. I don't know that if I was governor, I would have had made all the right decisions with COVID. And you could also say that DeSantis hasn't done it perfectly either. But if you look at what he's doing now, he's punching back. And the stuff with Disney and the stuff, even against the federal government has been fantastic to watch. The big mission we have for 38 GOP from now until November is is to show up and vote. That sounds very cliche, like old stuff, but 30,000 votes is what separated us from being the free state of Florida or the new North Korea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And by the way, Brett, we're talking about the midterms coming up in November. And I want to remind everybody that in less than a month, August 23rd, the primaries. And I want to thank some sponsors right now and let everybody know who I'm going to be voting for the school board. If you're fed up with parents being kept out of the loop in our schools, political nonsense crowding out basic education, and Bay District Schools, with its $500 million budget, spending too much money on contractors and consultants instead of on the students themselves, then vote for Francis Keys Gordon for school board on or before August 23rd.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
Brett, I'm not sure if I interrupted a thought or not, but I want to let you finish that thought and let everybody know about the event that's coming up, because Vish Burra, I mean, everybody's going. I don't even know the details about how he is responsible for the Hunter Biden laptop from hell.
Yeah, so this is fantastic. I'll talk about Vish Burra. It's fun and easy with you to talk about all the other things going on, but I really want to focus on Vish Burra. This is someone who is, there he is right there. Very unique for him to come and visit us. So Vish Burra, let me just read you a little bit of his resume. So he's the former executive producer of War Room with Steve Bannon. That's Steve Bannon's current show. Vish is the one who started that up. He's former producer of the Firebrand podcast with Matt Gaetz. That's an ongoing podcast right now. And in fact, I encourage you to go listen to that, because Vish is actually featured on one of the episodes from a few months ago. And there's video for him too. He's former vice president of the New York Young Republicans. That's one of the largest Republican clubs in the United States. I'll tell you a fun story about that in a little bit. He's the current executive secretary. And he is the communications director today for Carl Palladino. That's New York 23. This is a very red district up in New York. But here's why we know him, and here's why he matters. So we all know the story of the laptop. But in case you don't, I'll refresh and give just a little 30,000 foot view. Hunter Biden went to a repair shop to have his laptop repaired. Gives it to the guy, never comes back to claim it. We've all seen the picture of that guy. I think he has like a beret or like a funny hat or something. And he tries to get in contact with Hunter Biden, tries for months, can't get a hold of him. Officially, the laptop becomes his. Now, at that point, that guy was somewhat liable or culpable because he had seen a lot of bad and illegal stuff. So he immediately turns it into the FBI. Turns the FBI, just leaves it like that. He truly has no political motivations. About a year later, he is starting to see, this is when the election of 2020 went in favor of Biden, and now Rudy Giuliani, Trump's main lawyer, is working on stuff. And if you recall, they're trying to impeach Trump on Ukraine, and they're saying that there was a call where he was trying to coerce Ukraine to do whatever. Now, here's what triggered, going back to the store owner who'd already turned in the laptop. He had turned this laptop in and no one had said anything, but he knew full well by looking at the contents that, no, it wasn't Trump who colluded with Ukraine. It was actually Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Biden family. And he knew that. So because it was his property and because he saw no one on the federal government working on it, he contacts Rudy Giuliani, says, Rudy, here's stuff on it. Now, Rudy Giuliani is extremely involved in the current Trump lawsuits and all like that. He doesn't really do anything with it. He's also, in his 80s, and I don't know that he's really understanding the sensationalism of what's on there. Rudy gives it to Steve Bannon. At the time, Vish Burra is the executive producer for Steve Bannon. I think Steve Bannon sees it, but he's like, hey, Vish, take a look at this, see if there's anything worth it. Again, at this time, nobody knows about it. And Vish starts going through the computer and just jaw dropped immediately. Just, I can't believe what I'm seeing. So much stuff that he can't even talk about right now.
And Brett, we got to say, it's not just the salacious stuff. It's voicemails of Biden talking to Hunter about, it appears, business dealings. I mean, it's the salacious stuff, but it's really could be a lot bigger than that.
Yeah, and so he basically comes to Steve and says, "Look, I know you're talking about this one thing right now, but let me bring your attention to this." And that's where he made the case to Steve Bannon, and they started to put it out. And the whole reason we even know about anything on that laptop or about Hunter Biden is because Vish is the one who found it, packaged it up, put it out there. And then even more recently, so you might be saying, well, what's happened with that? Well, almost nothing. And here's why. They have been fighting to keep that out of Congress for, well over a year or more, almost 2 years now. But just a few months ago, you can go to Matt Gaetz's podcast. He details what they did on a completely unrelated hearing. And I forget which committee it was, but they had the cybersecurity chief of the FBI there for a somewhat unrelated cause. And Matt Gaetz has a pretty famous exchange now where he says, hey, what do you know about the Hunter Biden laptop? And the cybersecurity chief is deflecting it and saying, that's not what I'm here to talk about. And as Congressman Gaetz pushes back, he says, shouldn't the head of cybersecurity for the FBI know about the son of the president? And it goes to nothing.
And this was in a congressional testimony.
And so the theater, the art of what happened is Congressman Gaetz said to the chair, he said, well, then I'd like to admit this as part of evidence so that we can look into it further. And Vish was the one there handing the hard drive of the laptop. They entered it into evidence, and what they don't know they did, this was kind of a mistake on, kind of grand politics by the Democrats, is they allowed this entire laptop to now be part of evidence. And so what that means,
a copy of the hard drive, the entire hard drive.
Yeah, the entire hard drive is there. People can now do the Freedom of Information Act and get all of it themselves. It can now be used in other things. So I think that is the start of a lot of stuff.
Matt Gaetz, being a lawyer, was very smart, and I'm sure he is surrounded by other smart dudes, including Vish Burra.
Yeah, and I can't do it as much justice. Go and watch that podcast. There's some great detail on it, but more importantly, if you want to hear the story firsthand and a whole lot more, come Thursday night. It's Thursday night. Distillery 98. Distillery 98 is on the east part of Walton County. It's about 5 minutes away from the border of Bay County. So if you're a Bay County viewer, drive into there. We have many attendees from Bay County, of course, a ton from Walton, Okaloosa. We even have some people come in from Escambia and Santa Rosa because we do have some pretty neat speakers. So come in Thursday night, sign in. It's $15 for non-members. If you want to join the 30A GOP, and I'll make a case for that later, it's $10. 30A GOP is super cheap to be a part of. But he's going to be speaking. He's going to be answering some questions. You're also going to see a little bit of some Walton County politics over there. We like to focus on local races too. So I can't stress enough how cool this event is going to be to have him visiting us. And so, Bernie, your next question might be is like, why is Vish coming down to a little old Panhandle to talk about stuff? Florida represents something to other people that I think, maybe the Alamo or the Battle of Thermopylae has represented the rest of it. We're the last stand of freedom. And people want to come and speak down here. And so I just reached out to Vish and I said, hey, look, this is we're the most radical room in Florida. We talk about dangerous ideas and liberty and freedom. And we would love for you to come and just be a part of it. And I mean, he's from New York. We've had people from all over the country want to, visit our events. We had Showtime, the network, like Showtime and HBO.
Yeah.
They wanted to do a hit piece on us. Showtime, a news channel called The Circus, wanted to come cover our Christina Pashaw event. And it sounded really fishy when they were talking to me. And I eventually said no. I wasn't. And that wasn't until later I found out that they were trying to do some type of hit piece. So it tells me we're doing the right thing and we're saying the right things and having the right people because we're being attacked. And, I wear that.
Brett, I want to say this too. I saw Vish Burra on Timcast IRL, which is an incredible podcast every night at 7 p.m. And I want to show just a little very short clip of him because one of the things that I believe, clearly politics is important and that means that the parties are involved. But to me, and I think I heard Tho Bishop say this first. These days, it's less about Republican versus Democrat than it is insiders versus outsiders. And we're on the outside. I
Yep.
like to say to Democrats, if you think you have more in common with Hillary Clinton than, say, George Bush does, you're wrong. George Bush and Hillary Clinton are insiders. They have way more in common than you have as a Democrat with Hillary Clinton, or vice versa. And he, being inside of DC, he made this great comment on Timcast, and here it is.
I think there's
I think there's a divide, first of all, of our understanding of right wing and like Republicans, right? The Republicans in DC and then the Republicans across the nation are two totally different things, right? For example, you're talking about why didn't the FBI or the CIA move on 529, right?
Insurrection.
The insurrection. Who was the president at the time? Donald Trump. That was his FBI. That was his CIA. Why didn't they move, right? And then you're definitely not going to get a move out of a Biden FBI or DOJ. The problem is so entrenched in DC, right? The FBI is a bunch of it used to be a Republican stronghold, but Republicans of DC, right? Your James Comey's of the world, Bill Barr, Robert Mueller, right? This is the uniparty, right? There is one belief in the DC realm, right? When you're outside, in West Virginia, New York, or whatever, and it's left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. But once you get to DC, once you win that battle and you get to DC, the fight becomes the incumbents versus everybody else. So the problem you have is that when you try to abolish the FBI or you try to abolish these corrupt
Just limit the
institutions,
power.
I'm with you on that, right? But first you have to get in the guys who believe that into those positions, because you can't abolish that institution while you have James Comey or a Bill Barr or Robert Mueller.
So that's what I'm talking about when I say he really sees it more than just partisanship. It's not just Republican versus Democrat. I want to get your thoughts on that. And you can tell us more about the event right after this.
While getting to know the residents of Bay County, I observed a pattern of complaints about corrupt career politicians, people born into politics, buying their way into politics, and creating self-serving policy for themselves, their families, and their friends. It's time to shake things up and get an America First patriot in office, one who is for the people and of the people.
Hand caught in the cookie jar? Sometimes bad habits continue even into adulthood. I'm El Saline, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
Amazing comments by Vish Burra. Do you want to touch on them?
Yeah, I mean, he resonates a little bit or a lot of it with that question that you said, like what kind of changed. And with me personally, I think for a long time, I've probably protested in front of the Federal Reserve more times than I can count, and it's still here, surprisingly. And now it's a bit of an old trope to say we've got to get our guys in first before we can, change it. Because, I mean, isn't it every single election they say, oh, this is the most important election of your lifetime. And if we can just get the House and if we can just get the Senate. But, there is some element to that. If you, I commonly think of politics as siege warfare. And, is it better to take over the castle or to build a castle next to it or destroy the castle down to rubble? I don't quite know that answer. But at least from our perspective, I'll tell you this, on the federal level, I don't care as much anymore because I think DeSantis has shown us that it doesn't matter who the president is if you have a strong person. And hey, guess what? Our founders knew something. Federalism works, and 50 laboratories of innovation can really do something. But
yeah, and I want to remind people, let's not forget, it's the states that created the federal government, and so the rule of composition is a legal doctrine. And what it means is that which is created is not stronger than its creator. The states created the federal government. The 10th Amendment talks about you only have the powers that we gave you. You're not the boss of us. I think that's the 10th Amendment quote. You're not the boss of us.
Right.
And the 6th and Article 6 as well. Some people say, but Bernie, what about the supremacy clause that says that the laws and the federal government and even treaties are the supreme law of the land? Yeah, but you're leaving out the most important part. It says only if it's in pursuance thereof, only if it's in the Constitution. If it's not in the Constitution, if it's repugnant to the Constitution, it's not the supreme law of the land. And the states retain those rights. And Governor DeSantis is really showing that. And I like that a lot too, Brett.
Yeah. And so, and this is what I say to all the people griping all the time. If you look at this last cycle, DeSantis's enemies were not the left in terms of Democrats. They were fellow Republicans. We had a Speaker of the House and of the Senate who actively worked against and did not pass some things that DeSantis would have signed: constitutional carry, physician-free speech, among others. And if you look at it, it's an overwhelmingly Republican legislature. Why is that? It doesn't make sense. Well, what I know then is that, okay, if it tells me we have some house cleaning to do on the conservative side of things, and then let's go down to school board or county commissioner and stuff like that.
Brett, before you do that, I think what you're talking about is there was a real split when DeSantis ran the first time. You had the Putnam-Bush Republicans in Florida who didn't want anything to do with DeSantis or Trump. And that fight is still going on, as I know being in the GOP. I'm an independent, so I don't see it as much maybe as you do. But that's sort of what you're talking about. There's different kinds of Republicans. And I think what you want are the types that are going to promote liberty, that are not afraid to push back against all of the Bolshevik that's always happening.
Yeah, and what you find, whether you're a Putnam type and a Bush type, or if you talk to the individual people, generally everybody agrees that when it gets to that high politics that things start to get, and deals are being made and stuff. But again, these are all things that are club that people get stressed out about. And I say, okay, wait a second. Do we have our school board exactly the way we want it? Do we have our county commissioners exactly the way we want it? Let's start there. To take a line from Jordan Peterson, let's clean our room first. Because how are we going to complain about president or whoever if, we've got a school board who, and if you're in Walton County, we just had a pretty interesting thing happen. Walton County is number 3 performing schools in the state of Florida. It was, I guess the rankings came out or whatever. But if you would have even known what a group called Moms for Liberty found in our classrooms and the stuff they were teaching, it shows us that, hey, we've been focusing all on these federal elections and stuff. But meanwhile, our even though our school district is performing well, we have some stuff to do here. And so we're experiencing quite the purge on the school board this year. And
Brett, local politics is where we can make a difference. Miss Sarah Moon, when somebody tries to egg her into my sweetheart, when somebody tries to egg her into a national debate or talking about Biden, Trump, or whatever, she always says, can you tell me who your school board members are? If you can't tell me who's on your city council, I'm not gonna waste time arguing with you about what you've seen on TV.
No, it's hard too, because I'm deeply involved here, but I drive around for work and I see these school board signs, or really there's no school board signs. It's mainly county commissioner. And I try to ask myself, for the normal person who's working all day and dealing with kids at night, and then head hits the pillow and they're waking right back up, who are they going to vote for county commissioner? It would be a shame if it came down to the last sign they saw, or alphabetical order, or someone who looked cool or something like that. But unfortunately, I think it does. I think we're getting the government we deserve somewhat, because I just go talk to random people, and they have, and I have empathy for that. People are busy. But,
and not only that, Brett, local news, they've become public-private partners. The county commissions or these quasi-government bodies like the TDC, they will basically route advertising dollars to these news outlets, and then they become public-private partners, and they're no longer watchdogs, which is why it's important to have shows like this. And why don't you plug the Liberty guys, the podcast you're talking
absolutely.
About, because they're helping people understand this stuff.
Yeah, and here's an interesting thing about Walton County is that we don't, the news we watch typically comes from like Panama City. So it doesn't, we typically don't get covered on a story. And we don't have a newspaper here, maybe Northwest Florida Daily News. We had the Walton Sun, that shut down, but no one's really reading that anymore. So it's very interesting. It's had this very neat effect where most people get their conservative politics from a podcast we have in Walton County. It's called The Driveway Liberty Podcast. You can find them on Facebook. Something interesting has happened. I'm a fan and a supporter, but they've broken into, out of 26,000 podcasts on their podcast server. Last I saw, they're like number 140, number one in politics, number 140 overall. They have candidates reaching out to them to do interviews, and it's very cool. You're seeing this kind of regional news thing come out. In a way, the 30-day GOP is a little bit of a regional kind of news source just for politics. We're kind of a hub where we can teach people stuff and send them on their way. But the Driveway Liberty guys, very interesting. They cover a lot of stuff, and they recently recorded the Marco Rubio event at a fellow Republican club, the Women's Federated, and Rubio staffers knew who they were, and they came up. There's kind of a little joke on the podcast where they're actually recorded in a driveway. That's kind of their neat shtick. And one of the Rubio staffers came up and said, "Guys, are you the only podcast ever to record in a driveway?" And they were just like blown away. In that week, they had over 500 listens just from DC itself. So that might have been the FBI. They may be on a watch list now. But, it shows the impact that your voice can have, even on the small scale. But, and the national stuff for them is great. These guys are friends of mine, so I get to see a lot of inside baseball. But and so many people come up to me and say, "Oh, I heard on such and such," because I promoted this event there too. And they say, "Hey, I heard on the Driveway Liberty that you were going to do this." I'm like, "Yeah, I did." So it's really neat. That's honestly where we turn to for politics here, a local podcast. Can you believe that?
So Thursday night is the event. It's $15 for non-members per person, $10 if you want to join the 30A GOP. And Brett Lindell is the president, and these are liberty type Republicans. These are my kind of guys. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about that right after this.
Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan can make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at pcairrepair.com.
All right, Brett, why should people consider joining if they go to your event or otherwise? You don't have to live in 30A to be part of the 30A GOP.
Yeah, and we have a ton of attendees come from outside of the county. So, my kind of goal was 30A is known for the kind of snobby tourists who come down with a lot of money vacation. And I said, I'm going to change that. I want 30A to be known as the most radical people in Florida who fight for what's right. And it's grown in a way that I could never have predicted. So one of the things is, I'll tell you a little bit about Vish. So here's how I came to meet Vish as well. He's vice president of the New York Young Republicans. And I said I would tell you the story. If you remember, so there's a good picture of him. He's actually at that event wearing a tux. And if you remember, just after COVID, there was some coverage of a story and Matt Gaetz was part of it, where a bunch of New Yorkers were partying with no masks and having this big gala event. There was just a few months, I think we can all recall it, and Matt Gaetz was in attendance. And so that was the New York Young Republicans Club. The president now is Gavin Wax. He's pretty prominent on Twitter, Turning Point USA.
I know Gavin. He's a good guy, smart guy, brave guy.
Yeah, and go look at the roster of the people who are members or attend there. I mean, it's just the who's who of who's involved in like local politics or, kind of national politics right now. But 3 years ago, they only had 60 members, and now they have well over 1,000. And let me tell you, it's one thing to be in the Florida Panhandle and not wear a mask, but to be in New York City right after COVID, to do right during COVID rather, to do an event with no mask, they were risking something. And that's one of the challenges being down here in the Panhandle. our life is pretty good. It's beautiful down here. It's free. We might have wore a mask like 1 or 2 days over in Walton County, if that. We don't really see that pain that a lot of these people in other states do. And as much as we want to say they're the left or the liberals or whatever, there's a lot of good people up there who are suffering, who don't have the ability to move. And so they're there fighting back. And that's what New York Young Republicans does and Bish does. And so Bish has actually been giving us some advice on how to grow our club. And so our goal for the 30A GOP is not just to be a club of people meeting in South Walton County. We're bringing in national level speakers, Christina Pashaw, Vish Burra. We're going to start doing a video component pretty soon where we can have some more of these people on there who cannot physically travel here. But our goal is that if someone wants to, so the New York Young Republicans, if you want to run for office in New York or New Jersey, that tri-state area, your first visit is the New York Young Republicans Club. That's where politicians go. Politicians, as you know, will also tailor their message to win votes, and that's how their message gets tailored. So
some will even adopt the dialect. I ain't in no ways tired.
Yeah, a little Hillary Clinton.
The Hillary Clinton. I ain't no ways tired.
She had to remember back to when she was doing her Arkansas accent when Bill was running for governor.
And AOC, of course, does a lot of that. But
oh my gosh. So what's cool is that these are just people. New York Young Republicans was a fledgling little 60-person club, and they turned it into this dynamic powerhouse. To now they control the narrative on what politics, and they're going to be the ones who take back freedom in New York, New Jersey, and I don't even know all the states north of the Mason-Dixon line. So whatever third state is right there in that tri-state area. And so what our vision is, if you're a member of our club, is the Panhandle is free for a reason. And let me give my another little spiel. If you lived in Florida, or if you lived in since March 2020, if you lived in Florida, you most likely have lived in the freest part of the world. No, Florida was the freest part of the world. If you lived in the Florida Panhandle, you lived in the freest part of Florida. And if you lived in Bay County or Walton County or this area, you lived in the freest part of the Panhandle. So if you lived in the freest part of the world, in the freest part of Florida, in the freest part of the Panhandle, we have a privilege that we are free, but we also have a duty and a burden and a responsibility. I have 3 little boys, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And if I want this place to be as wonderful and majestic, as free for them as it is for me, it's up to me to make sure it stays that way. The way it's going to stay that way is I'm going to make our voice heard. And the way we're doing it for 30A GOP is we are a group who are unafraid to tell the truth. We're unafraid to stand up for what's right. And we want to gather like-minded people so that when politicians want to run for office, 1, the good politicians have a platform to speak. And 2, when people are thinking about running for office, that they're going to see what values matter. Rather than deciding, doing polling and deciding what they're going to vote like based off of a national poll, the poll is 30A GOP, at least for Walton County. And I hope to grow that influence even farther over the next few months. So join. Absolutely. If you use the keyword free Florida, so it's $25. That's super cheap. If you use the keyword free Florida, you get 10% off. That's $2.50. That's going to help you out with half a tank of gas under Biden, a full tank under Trump. It just depends on when you decide to use it. So go to 30agop.org. You'll see info about how to join on there. If you join, you get $5 off. So your $15 ticket for the Vish event becomes $10. It's the cheapest $2 a month you're going to spend. Cheapest $25 on 30A. Entirely worth it. All this does is barely offset the costs, if even that. We go into pocket quite a bit. But, we're all freedom fighters and we care about the mission more than we do the money. So please join. And we'd love to see people there. And if you do come and you saw this because of the Bernie Thompson show, please come and make it known and say hi. We'd love to recognize you and join up with you.
All right. Absolutely. And did you let everybody know where they can go to where I know you put the link in there where they can get the tickets. So if you look in the comments, you can see the link where to get the tickets. But I want to give you a sort of a final welcome to the event or invitation to the event. And Brett, I always appreciate being with you, man. Thank you so much. I love Liberty guys, Liberty Republicans. The Republican Party needs to get its act together. And guys like you are helping that.
Yeah, and if you're in our neck of the woods, the Republican Party's functioning really well. We're excited to get a lot of new and excited people who love freedom, and we want to capture that enthusiasm and channel it. We're working very hard to re-elect Governor DeSantis in November. And Walton, and one last thing, Bernie, Walton County and the Panhandle serves a purpose that most people don't understand. So here's the risk for this year. In an off-year election cycle, so that means an election cycle where there's not a presidential race, typically only 1 in 5 voters show up to vote. Okay, that's very risky given that Governor DeSantis only won by 30,000 votes last time. The other part is that Walton and Bay and Okaloosa and Santa Rosa, but we can't just vote red. It's not enough to just like be red versus blue. We have to overwhelmingly come out with a Republican vote and vote red because we offset Duval County, Broward, Brevard, Orange, all those counties to the south that are extremely liberal. So our overwhelming votes help turn the tide for the rest of Florida. So we're functioning well. We intend to function better, and honored to be a guest on your show. Honored to be next to a fellow patriot and freedom fighter, and looking forward to the event, and hope to see you there.
Yeah, you will. I'll see you there. Brett Lindell, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Bernie.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right. So there it is. Thursday night. Hope to see you. $15 a person. $10 if you want to join on the same night. And I'm looking forward to seeing Vish. As I said, I saw him on Timcast IRL, and it was pretty awesome. Another organization in Florida that is promoting liberty and choice to make our lives better is Americans for Prosperity. Americans for Prosperity is the largest grassroots organization advancing policies that help people improve their lives. AFP Florida seeks to end corporate welfare, expand energy options, and reform education and healthcare by giving people more choices. Sign up today and volunteer at americansforprosperity.org. If you haven't done so yet, the show also goes live on YouTube. And I really don't do nearly as much on YouTube, but I sure would like to grow the channel so that I can. If you haven't followed or like and subscribe, I got to learn the language. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'd be thrilled if you did. YouTube, and also, of course, right here, if you haven't already, like and follow the show right here on Facebook. Share the event. I hope to see you Thursday night, 5:30. And with that, I'm going to sign out. And I'll see you next time.